Okay. Welcome everyone to the presentation about top hacks since we met last time in Brussels. I am Matthias. I'm still waiting for Julien from Rekt to appear. So I'll give you a quick intro so when he comes that you know already who he is. You might know him, right? He's the founder of Rekt News, and this is also where we got all the information from, and of course many different sources about all of these hacks which happened since EthCC 2024, so July 2024. And who isn't familiar with Rekt News in here? Like, who hasn't heard about it? I think it's okay, so I don't need to say what it is. Quick words about myself. So I'm Matthias, I'm the co-founder and CTO at ChainSecurity, and we are an audit company. We are like more than 7 years old and really audited a lot of systems out there. We like to do a lot of research, right? And usually we are employed inside the Ethereum ecosystem for complex DeFi systems. So now, let's start. We really had, sadly, once again, an interesting year in hacks. I don't go by order. I'll go over the top 10 hacks, but not in order. We'll start with VazirX. VazirX was a compromised multisig, a safe wallet, and the attackers managed here to trick signers into approving a transfer of the vault eventually, right? So this attack started with the attackers actually triggering VazirX to go to the cold wallets to transfer funds out. They did that by buying Gala and exhausting the hot wallet. And so then VazirX went and did a routine transfer. They were also protected by Liminal, a service which co-signed on their transactions. But now the signers weren't able to actually trigger that transaction. It failed. Right, but they actually were able to sign a valid transfer. It was just not the one they expected. So after 3 signers signed that transfer, Liminal also co-signed on it, and now this transfer, this transaction was actually a transfer of the vault ownership to the attackers, who at that point, of course, had full access to all of these funds. There are a few things to learn from this. So we had a very large cold wallet holding significant amount of funds. And this allowed an attacker to trick people to sign one transaction to exploit a lot, right? And it is normal, like whoever, sadly, you all know that signing a transaction often fails. It's just kind of the expected behavior by now that there are random errors here and there, and then you just retry, right? And then, of course, if you build in third-party systems and you think they protect you and you don't need to think for yourself anymore, but you don't really know what they are actually doing, that they, in this case, just say like, yeah, sure, we had 3 signatures, so we'll co-sign, means you might be in a false sense of security. And my major takeaway here was that we should aim for this level, which I kind of call 3-star security. You try that there are no single points of failure. That is step 1. And then you try that there are not even points of failure where if 2 systems fail, you fail, right? This is obviously for very large funds. It's very important. So that an attacker on all levels need to at least figure out a way how to manipulate 2 systems, but ideally 3 systems before they get those funds. A list of the possible things you need to think about are like, is a single person signing? I mean, obviously, right? Is there just a single communication channel which says, please transfer those funds, and then blindly a lot of people follow it? Is there a single UI? Is there a single HSM? Is there a single laptop or a single brand of laptop? And so on, it goes on and on. It is just attackers will look for the weakest link, and they'll probe, and if the weakest link is just one thing they need to compromise, then of course that is an obvious target for them. The other takeaway here, if you sign off on systems which do hold significant amount of funds, anything which isn't as you expected needs to be like treated very carefully, right? That you don't ignore errors which you saw just to move on. But again, I know this is easier said than done. We are skipping over a similar type of attack, which a crypto whale was tricked into signing over access to their DS proxy, also with a malicious signature. In this case, we have very little information what's actually happened. And for all the hacks I'm going to present today, I just focus on those where we actually can learn, because the projects did a lot of disclosure forensics and published those results. But this is a similar hack. We come to another similar hack, Radiant Capital. Radiant Capital was hacked by, again, malicious signing from 3 out of their 11 signatures. And it was, again, a safe contract. It was in October 2024. And the attackers, in the end, were able to run away with 53 million across many different chains. And what the forensic results showed were that the laptops from the people who signed here were compromised. Now, if you have 11 signers, then it is often the case that those people sign from dual-use laptops. Laptops they also use in their work. It's a broad set, right? It gives you more resilience in like being able to react to things. It's easier to reach 3 out of 11 than 3 out of 4. But of course, it's also harder to keep all of these 11 in a state where their OPSEC is very secure. So in this case, the attacker deployed a smart contract 2 weeks before the hack. They harvested over time the 3 signatures they needed from those employees. When they got all of them, they triggered the transfer ownership of the safe, and you have heard it before, right? So it's kind of always the same, and then they managed to withdraw all the funds. So here, what did we learn from this one, right? It is very similar to WazirX. So multisigs have that attack surface. In this specific case, using devices to sign, which are also being used in development or for other purposes, is an inherent risk, right? So I'm quoting Peter from the great Brock Threat newsletter from his talk last year, which is basically saying, buy your devs cheap Chromebooks to do the signing. Increasing the signing threshold, it can help, or lowering actually the amount of people you need to secure, it can also help. And yeah, as always, if you need to stop the world, in this case it was a multi-chain attack, and you have a measure in place to very quickly shut down access to systems across many chains, that can be helpful, and we'll see that in a different hack too. A few details. Later, Radiant Capital also did detailed forensics on what happened actually. How have these laptops being compromised. And here I want to say that I heard in discussing with people, it was a malicious PDF, right? And now you're afraid of opening PDFs. It's not a malicious PDF. It was something which looked like a PDF, but it wasn't. So a playbook you see here in the Radiant Capital hack, we actually have seen being used to great success again and again and again in the last year, right? So really, this is one to look out for. You have a Telegram account you trust because you already had interactions with them, and they reach out to you. Unbeknown to you, the user isn't the user, right? The Telegram account was compromised. And in this case, this user was going and like the attacker was telling the developer, look, I have the security research. I want to show it to you and get your opinion, right? I mean, it's very enticing to be asked for opinions, for your technical expertise. And this happened here. And then what they got was a link to a zip file. The zip file contained a Mac app. If you open the Mac app, it opens a PDF, right? And it made it look like you would get a PDF. In reality, because you executed a Mac app here, of course, in the background, you had full compromise of the system. Through that, they were also able to compromise more devices because that report was shared, right, and so on. And then they could wait and wait for the right moment to harvest those signatures. So basically, this is what happened with Radiant Capital. Now, we presented a lot of this actually in a more than 1 hour workshop in DEF CON together with Mudit Gupta from Polygon. We went over a lot of these things, right? You can of course find it online of this. So the next thing which happened was the one hack you all know about, right? The Bybit hack, the biggest hack ever in probably the history of humanity, if it's direct theft of funds. I'll quickly go over it because I know like that also a lot of people know a lot about it already, but just in case you don't know what happened here, Bybit had safe wallets as their cold wallets as multi-sigs, and the safe wallet is one which you usually access through the safe website. This website got compromised, and like in this case, a developer who had AWS access to deploy resources which were used by the website, an AWS key on his machine, he was tricked into downloading some Docker container, which I think it was a trading application, but basically which compromised his laptop, an info stealer, right? So this is common. We see that a lot, right? But now they had the AWS keys. They were able to exchange the JavaScript file on the server and put in something which specifically targeted Bybit. And when then Bybit was doing a routine transfer from their cold wallet to the hot wallet, they had a multi-sig in place and everything, right? And then multiple independent signers, but when they signed off on it, all of them relied on what the safe UI tells them. And it got better, I wouldn't say way better, but it got better today that you have a higher chance to validate what you sign on your ledger than on the safe UI, but back then it was very hard, and because it's routine transfers, you don't do this. Now, again, the usual thing happened, full safe transfer, and you can run away with all the funds. So advanced social engineering across the supply chain, and that led ultimately to this biggest heist we have seen in this industry so far. Bybit was very good at like communicating this very openly. We have we have a lot to learn from this, and this actually enabled the industry to improve a lot. But to some degree, you can say it took a 1.5 billion wake-up call. So what did we learn? Force devastating attack, same type, right? I mean, how many more do you need? Single point of failures, I repeat the same thing here. And then you can really think about how you remove them. You can try to remove the damage a single transaction can do. My current go-to call is start to develop mobile front ends, mobile apps. Mobile apps are much harder to compromise, and mobile is a much safer environment than a laptop, inherently so, right? Offer your users this, and Safe did it. Safe actually had one which is pretty usable, right? It wasn't used in this case, but we should make it a standard. Trust the mobile app over the website, much harder to phish too, right? So also, if you rely on centralized custodians, hold them accountable, ask for like their OPSEC and that they need to like prove that they adhere to good practices. This signing of malicious transactions blows everything away in number of hacks which we had in volume, right? And there is a long tail to this. There are many people who do this with much smaller amounts day in and day out. So don't forget this. I'll come to a smart contract hack. The second biggest, this is on SUI's exchange. And here we have a kind of simple arithmetic error which caused then them to lose 223 million, but they were able to freeze a lot, and only 60 million were leaving the chain. Of course, decentralization versus security, the usual thing, right? So what I want to quickly to show you what was the underlying thing which happened here. So if you want to convert a number like 000123 into 123, yeah, which you have to do in with computers, then it's pretty simple. What do? Yeah, you simply cut off the 3 digits on the left, right? And then this is written as this left shift operator. Now, what if the number is higher than 000123, right? Or like just if it's 1,000, for example, you want to revert. And how do you do this in computer code, right? I mean, not rocket science. You just say if number is bigger equal 1,000, you revert. You can write that cooler, right? Then you say like you left shift 1 by 3, then it's a 1,000. I'm using here decimal mass, right? But of course we do it usually in binary. And then you revert. Why is it written this way? Because we deal with large numbers, right? And then you don't want to have to write 196 zeros. You write it this way so it's more readable. And this is all safe and good. What else can you do? You just look at the leftmost 3 digits. Looks like this, and in computer code, it looks like this. You have a mask. You say like, hey, this is what we look at, where the F's are. This is what we have, because we have XOR, and then only those numbers survive, kinda. It must be bigger 0, and then we want to revert. Can be written cooler again with the left shift operator. What happens if you combine both, right? Then it's not good. So this is exactly what happened in this attack. A math library on SUI was like doing the protected shift left, which protects against these kind of errors, but it did it incorrectly. And in this case, you see in this line, you have the mask, but then on the second line, in the if condition, you actually use the check which you use if you directly compare numbers and not masks, right? And this is what happened here, and then basically CETAS in the end got hacked. So new blockchains, it's dangerous because they have their hidden bugs, of course, and you still need to learn about them. We can do that with fast testing libraries because they are small and they're easy to fast test. We can even do formal verification for them pretty efficiently. We should, in this case, we had a silver lining. SUI was able to stop the attack, a lot of the funds from being lost by telling their validators to please block this. And this is what, in the end, secured a lot of funds. But of course, less decentralization. We have a few more hacks, but we are also out of time. The PenPy hack, re-entrancy attack, once again, avoidable to some degree, but also not avoidable because it's on top, like making a liquid token on a Pendle system, which is a very complex system in its first place. PenPy is very complex, adding features on top, and then, I mean, do you have to pay to re-audit for 6 weeks your whole project because of a small new feature? Yes, but of course you can't afford, right? This also doesn't make sense, so we are kind of lost here. My go-to message here simply is try to stick with fewer auditors who already know the system. You have a little bit a higher chance that they actually catch it. So, yeah, the very last hack on the list, on Stacks blockchain with Bitcoin, both like Sui Bitcoin and like near misses we had show that other blockchains have inherently risky behavior. In this case, it was not understanding the as contract thing, which does something. If you know what a message sender does, it's kind of safe. But if you also know what TX origin on Ethereum does, then you know a little bit what happened here, that the attacker contract got ownership as if they are the vault and then could withdraw all the tokens. This is just how as contract works on Stacks, but that's kind of weird behavior. So also here, you need to understand deeply the library before you, the language before you can audit it, and you must understand this really. So we are out of time. I think we don't have time for questions. No? Okay. Thanks, everyone.